Hey everybody, it's Gail again. Hope you guys are all doing okay. Today I want to discuss what it's like to live with bipolar disorder. A lot of people have actually asked me this, and it's been so hard to define. So it's something that I really had to give a lot of thought to and write a lot of notes about because. Um, my experience with being diagnosed and then living with the disorder is, of course, different than anybody else's story. All of our stories are different, and this happens to be mine. So, um, before I begin, I want to thank you all for watching. Thank you to my subscribers. Thank you for those who are liking my videos. Um, I encourage you to comment and leave hints, tips, smart advice. If you can think of a topic you want me to cover and I haven't already covered it, leave that in the comments and I'd be more than happy to cover whatever interests you. So without further ado, let's go. When I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and it really sunk in what it meant, I went through almost stages of grief. My first stage of grief was, of course, denial. And I didn't want to believe that I had this disorder. This happened to other people. This didn't happen to me. Um, and when I was diagnosed based on the fact that I had had a psychotic break. And they basically summed up my symptoms that I had before the psychotic break and came to the conclusion that I had bipolar disorder. Um, I was in denial, and when I visited my first psychiatrist after the psychotic break, and he was with my husband and I remember him saying that I was still in a psychotic state, and I got really angry. I got really angry because I thought it was an insult. I thought he was insulting me. I wasn't sure what psychosis was or that it was a medical condition. I thought that he was bad mouthing me or something. So, what else? Medication management, symptoms breakthrough. Um, my symptoms are managed with medication and with therapy and with regular visits to my psychiatrist. I still have breakthrough symptoms like racing thoughts, um, sleep disturbances. I have a problem with excessive shopping, and that happens whether I'm manic or not, unfortunately. Um, this has been a better month, but sometimes I can spend a lot of money on absolutely nothing and it just gets me nowhere. So it's one of the things that I regret most about a manic episode when it's over is the destruction that it's caused um, in its path when it's finally over with. Um, I also have something called akathisia, which is basically restlessness. So even though I have the tardive dyskinesia, which is the involuntary movements, I have other involuntary movements too. So shaking my leg, tapping my foot, tossing and turning in bed, those are all common symptoms of akathisia and restlessness. And that can be brought on by the disease, but it's more likely brought on by the medication, especially the antipsychotics that that are used to treat bipolar disorder. Um, what is it like to live with bipolar disorder? I live with paranoia. I have feelings like I'm being followed. And I did have an episode of assault in my history that before that happened, I didn't have the paranoia as bad that somebody was following me. But since I have a history of being followed by somebody, and being stalked by somebody in college, my level of paranoia goes up, especially when I'm manic, which is more often than not that I'm manic and not depressed. So, sorry, I had to move. Um, Delusional thinking, misleading thoughts. I I go back to my biggest delusion in history. Delusions are thoughts that have no basis. And my first psychotic break, I can remember I was in the hospital, in the Women and Children's Hospital, because I was in the middle of a lupus flare while I was 8.5 months pregnant with my daughter. And it had been 8 days that I had gone without sleep, and I was accusing the nursing staff of putting methamphetamine in my IV. And that was the reason that I couldn't sleep. Um, so that was definitely a delusion. And then I'll have symptoms of grandiosity where I feel larger than life, like I can accomplish the world. And that gets frustrating and confusing because when you have the most motivation to do things, like when you're manic, you lack the wherewithal to do them because you're so easily distracted that you can't focus on one thing at a time. And instead you're focusing on 10 things at a time and nothing ever gets done. So that's a bit of what living with bipolar disorder is like. Um, Some of the more negative symptoms that I have include lack of energy, lack of motivation, something called flat affect, which you'll see me with when I'm in a mixed episode and I'm between manic and depressed. I'll just have kind of a flat, um, expressionless look on my face. And that's really actually common with people who have schizophrenia. It's one of the negative symptoms of schizophrenia, but it can also happen to people with bipolar disorder. And it's not uncommon that that would happen to me because I have bipolar disorder with psychotic features. So I've had psychosis before. So the fact that I have flat affect at times is not a surprise to any doctor by any means. Um, Following through with tasks is really difficult, especially when you're manic and you have 10 things that you wanted to do and 5 minutes to do them. Um, Hypomania and depression. A lot of people like the feeling of hypomania. It's a lower, lesser form of mania. Um, and you can have the euphoria and the burst of creativity and the flight of ideas, but it's lesser than it would be if it were full blown mania. Um, I don't particularly like any kind of mania. It's just bad news for me all around. So I don't indulge in the euphoria that goes along with mania at all, not for 1 minute, because I know that the crash that follows mania is just absolutely devastating. Um, so that's that for hypomania and depression. And then it's hard to participate in any activity of daily living with racing thoughts. Um, when that happens, um, and my thoughts seem like they're just going nowhere fast, that's when I have to get up and move. And that kind of goes along with the restlessness, is that I have to get up and move, whether that means I pace my house or I get in the car and I go to the park and I go and walk a little bit. Um, and there is, as far as bipolar disorder goes, it's a relapse remission type of a disease. So, um, right now, I'm in a pretty good state of health. I had an episode a couple days ago where I started to exhibit some features of a mixed episode, which is when you're experiencing mania and depression at the same time. But a slight change in my medication, and I'm back on track to where I was. So definitely grateful for that. It hasn't always been this way. Things are actually getting better with time. But my first hospitalization here in North Carolina was in 2009. And between 2009 and 2020, I was hospitalized 15 times. So, multiple hospitalizations during the year, and don't want to go back. So, that's kind of what life is like with bipolar disorder. I always ask why this happens, and my therapist is so funny because I'll just, be okay for a while, and then something will happen. I'll wake up and I'll start, experiencing mania or depression. And I just say, why? Why is this happening after so many weeks or months of being well? Why is this happening? And the simple answer is you have bipolar disorder. There's no other reason. There's no other reason for it. There's nothing that you did or didn't do to cause it. It just is what it is. And I wish you the best of luck riding it out. If you want some tips on how to mitigate some of your symptoms, watch my self-care video, because you might be surprised. You might find some ideas on there that might help you kind of navigate through an episode, whether it's depression or mania. And self-care tips are important for everybody living with whatever kind of illness you have. So I'm gonna close it at that and wish you a good evening, and take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I hope to see you really soon. Bye.